And welcome back to Newsmax Prime. We now want to take you live to Donald Trump's rally taking place right now in Houston, Texas. This is at the Woodlands Waterway Marriott in Texas, where Trump is expected to speak any moment from now. The doors to tonight's event opened up at 4 o'clock. He was expected to speak at 7 o'clock. Last night he spoke in Dallas. He was about 17 minutes late. So again, we're expecting him to speak at any moment now. He's expected to draw as many as 5,000 supporters, some of whom have been waiting since the early hours of this morning. This will be Trump's final stop in his two-day swing through the Lone Star State. The presumptive Republican nominee visited the Woodlands back in May of last year. Now, before this rally, Trump went to a fundraising dinner in River Oaks that was hosted by Houston attorney Tony Busby. Former Texas Governor Rick Perry was expected to be in attendance at that event. Perry, as you may recall, was defeated by Trump along with 15 other Republican presidential candidates. We now want to go to the phones now, and we want to remind you to join the conversation. The phone number is 1-877-NEWSMAX. Joining us now is Don from Reddington, California. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's
Redding,
right.
California. There we go. Thanks so much for joining us. Pleasure to have you.
Yeah, it's good to be here. You're doing a fine job filling in for Mr. JD this week.
Well, I'm trying. Those are some big shoes to fill, but I'm doing my best. What's your question or comment?
Well, I want to kind of backtrack just a minute. My comment is about this whole sad thing that happened in Orlando.
Right.
And I think that Donald Trump had it exactly right. I think had there been more people in that room, or I should say somebody in that room with a concealed weapons permit, I think that if the states would allow people, they need to allow people to obtain these permits so that there would be bullets going back at the bad guys, because we all know the police cannot be everywhere they're needed. And by the time they find out something like Orlando's going on, all they can do is show up and clean up the mess. And I think we need to be able, and now people, and Mr. Obama is talking about more gun control. So he wants to disarm us again. I don't see that as the answer.
What do you see as the answer, though? I mean, obviously you're in support of more guns being used to protect ourselves. What are you in favor of? You've heard a lot of proposals coming out tonight. You probably heard from Dr. Zuhdi Jasser there talking about radical Islam, that the president needs to call it for what it is. What, in your mind, do you think that the Republicans and Democrats are missing?
Well, I think that it's the same old rhetoric that we've been listening to for the last 20 years or more. Every time something happens, they just want to take the gun away. And I don't see, guns don't kill people, people kill people. And one of your guests earlier alluded to that. He was, I very much liked what he had to say. And he was talking about they'll use a knife, they'll use a club,
right.
They'll use a stick, because it's all about an ideology. You know, it's about the way they think.
Right, the ideology. Don, thanks so much
Absolutely.
for your comment. We now want to go to Andy, who joins us now from Knoxville, Tennessee. Thanks for joining us here on Newsmax Prime. Pleasure to have you. What's your question or comment?
Well, Miranda, is this Miranda? I was listening to Miranda's program, I guess, here at the prime
Well, it's
time.
actually JD's program. He's the host of Newsmax Prime, but I'm filling in, and my name is Miranda. Thank you for joining us.
Okay, well, I'm calling a first-time caller, but I'm...
well, hopefully not the last time.
I'm an 85-year-old active supporter of our remarkable Constitution and Donald Trump. I believe that this blaming of all of these current atrocities to guns is certainly an intentional progressive misrepresentation, deflection of the real problem.
And what do you think the real problem is, Andy?
Well, I believe these people are not radicals that are causing these issues. These people are devout Muslims following the strictures of Muhammad himself in his later years when he turned violent and so-called was repeating what Allah told him. He in 1627, for instance, he ordered the massacre of hundreds of people in Saudi Arabia, and as advises in the Quran itself, instructs all of those who his followers to if people will not convert to Islam, that they're targets for death. And these people that are conducting these, whether they're cells or whether they're individuals, whether it's Hamas or
so you don't see any
Brotherhood,
differentiation between radical Islam
exactly
and regular
Muhammad
Muslims.
told them and the Quran instructs them to do.
So you don't see the point when you hear people, especially on the left, talking about that we need, and we've heard it on the right too, that we need the help of Muslims here in this country to combat radical Islam. You don't distinguish
well,
a
until
difference.
the Muslims themselves begin, the leaders begin to renounce the most violent strictures and instructions of Muhammad, this is never going to change. And I'm afraid that they're all fearful for their own lives, that they'll be guilty of apostasy if they speak out.
Well, Andy, we
and
really
so I
appreciate
see it as a huge conundrum. I don't believe it's ever going to change.
Well, I hope for all of our sakes it does. Andy, thank you so much for calling in here at Newsmax Prime. We hope you'll call back again, that this wasn't your only time. We now want to take you back live to the Donald Trump rally that's taking place right now in Houston, Texas. We're waiting for him to speak. The time now is about 8:39. Mr. Trump is scheduled to go on at 8 o'clock Eastern time. So we're still waiting for him. We did have a gentleman that was up earlier. About 5,000 people are expected to attend tonight's rally. And apparently this was like a week-long search. A lot of law enforcement weren't even made aware of this rally until Wednesday afternoon, but they say they're prepared. Trump has been there. He was actually there at this very venue last year around May. We've been talking a lot about terrorism and gun control. Republicans point to terrorism as a root cause of what happened in places like Orlando. But Arizona Senator John McCain has taken it a step farther, blaming President Obama's policies for the attack in Orlando. Here's what he had to say.
That the president's actions by pulling everybody out of Iraq, which led then to al-Qaeda moving to Syria, which meant the birth of ISIS, and the president's failure to address the threat of ISIS has led to attacks on the United States of America, which I have predicted, the Director of National Intelligence has predicted, and we predict more attacks on the United States of America. If the president had not pulled everybody out of Iraq, you would have never seen the rise of ISIS. So he bears responsibility.
Now, McCain later tweeted this out following those remarks that you just heard. To clarify, I was referring to President Obama's national security decisions that have led to the rise of ISIL, not the president himself. So a lot of people are asking, is Senator McCain correct in asserting that it was the president's policies that helped lead to the rise of ISIS? We've had guests on this very program say, yes, he is. What do you think? Give us a call. The number to call is 1-877-NEWSMAX. Again, that's 1-877-NEWSMAX. Join the conversation. We'd love to hear from you. What do you hear about McCain? What do you think about some of these Democrats saying that the answer here is more gun control? Do you agree with Hillary Clinton, who has talked about reinstating a ban on semi-automatic weapons, something that went into effect back in 1994? Again, join the conversation. The number there is on your screen, 1-877-NEWSMAX.